Play, Watch, Listen is a mostly games industry podcast featuring mostly game developers, and it is funded entirely by supporters on Patreon.
Hi.
How's it going, Alana?
I too am recording now. Yeah, it's going alright. I'm unemployed-ish.
Yeah, I saw you put the announcement up.
So I left my job, which is a very scary thing to do, and I'm now going indie. I did I'm sure many people did this, my immediate phone call with Rami that I set up a meeting time with him.
That's step one. It's like St. Peter. Yeah, you have to check.
You go right to Rami and be like, "Listen, indie dev now. What do I need to know here, Chief?"
I'm joining the indie space at a really good, healthy time in its history, right, Rami? Everything's fine.
Yeah, this will be great, right? Well, I'd actually. So, for context, everyone, I left my job at Sony. I have a whole announcement about it. I don't need to talk about it a bunch, but really the reason is because I've been working full-time in the US for 10 years, and I just want to be able to see my family more after recently losing somebody I love. So, it was a really tough call to make. They were, very insistent that if I ever wanted to go back, I could, and I actually don't doubt that I will end up doing that one day, because it was a really great place to work. But for now, I am doing freelance stuff. And am a narrative director on a game called Layers Deep. And I'm actually very excited for that, for this podcast too, because I get to talk about it, where all the other work that I've done, or at Santa Monica Studio at least, I was never allowed to speak about in any capacity. So it'll be fun to actually be able to talk about a game I'm working on when I haven't been able to for the past 4 years.
We can have a conversation where you...
I don't just sit there silently.
It's really exciting. I wasn't saying that. I didn't say that.
And there are things I can talk about now too. My gosh. So there's,
So who do we hate at Sony? That's the first object.
I love the company. There are upsides to it. Obviously, I am sad to leave. It's a really, really great place to work.
Yeah.
So I am definitely
That's
sad.
all I've ever heard.
Really tough call to make. No job is perfect, obviously. There are challenges. Whereas working on Layers Deep, they basically had the full art direction for the game. It's a Metroidvania. It's very Hollow Knight meets Over the Garden Wall meets Cuphead. That is what they have. They just have no story. So I just get to go in and be like, this? And we'll have a few meetings about it.
Emotions.
I figured it all out. I've got it all sorted already. It is going to be very lore specific. I'm not going to give any real explicit story through dialogue. I'm going to go very world building, and I'm excited to do that too, because it's very different to what I've done before, so it should be fun. But yeah, so that doesn't change anything about this podcast in any capacity or anything. It just means I can talk about stuff more, and I am looking forward to it. But related to that, Mike, we got a question on Patreon about something that you said. You said something, I think, very negative
annoyingly
on Blue Sky.
Viral. I moaned. I think it was 11 p.m. I posted something grumpy.
Oh no!
And I paid for it, like I always do.
What did you say? I missed. Sorry. The question is from Simeon Tim, who said it'd be good to hear more about Layers Deep and Mike's take on the indies will save us. Response to his State of the Industry post on Blue Sky.
Yes. Yeah. Let's unpack that.
I'm holding space for this.
I'm here with my buddy. Thank you for holding space. I need to see that movie. Nobody has ever, of all of the movie releases, Gladiator 2 and Wicked could not be more specifically targeted at me.
Are you a musical theatre person?
You're kidding, right? We've had that conversation, sure.
I don't think we have. It makes sense.
Oh, I'm a proper theatre kid obsessed with musicals, yeah. Yeah, I'm obsessed.
Interesting. I love when you learn something about somebody and you add it to the lore doc. I go, musical theatre kid.
Just pop it in. Yeah. Through dialogue, but you still get the world building. It's good. Let me find my incredibly controversial post that I put.
Did you? Oh, I didn't know that there was heat on this.
There was too much heat. I wasn't going for heat. Real talk, audience, people. I don't go out of my way to start drama, but sometimes drama comes from me, and this was one of those examples. I said, what time? I just need to see what time I posted. I will post it at 7 p.m. That is early to be posting vague
Doom, yeah.
sadness.
Yeah.
So that's on me. Game industry continues to be just incredibly bleak behind the scenes. Ecosystem is in free fall. Doubt there'll be an easy solution or a quick one. This darkest hour is dragged out to a darkest couple of years. That's kind of smugly narrative fucking designery bullshit.
Pretentious.
I don't like that. Pretentious, yeah. Like, oh, you thought you were really clever writing that, did you?
You're critiquing your own little microblog. That was very pretentious. Previous Mike, you roast yourself.
Nobody hates my writing as much as I hate my writing. It's fine. So I posted that, and
I'm
yeah,
actually surprised that that's controversial. So, you basically just said things are bad right now. I can understand somebody in your position. You know, you are very successful in the indie space. A lot of people know who you are. Of people not wanting to hear that from you. But we've had more layoffs this year.
I saw people quote tweeting like Mike is the most weirdly optimistic guy,
and maybe that was
who talks about games, and even he's like feeling bad.
But
now.
it is really bad. We've had almost more layoffs this year than the last 2 years combined. Like, it isn't better. You know, I think earlier in the year we were saying survive to 25. I don't even know if that's the case now. Things felt okay at GDC, but in any case,
fix it in 26. We can workshop that. Let's work out.
Yeah, we'll workshop that. So what made you post that? And the question was, did you have a response to the indies will save us? That apparently is.
So I posted because things are. Yeah, I posted because things are tough. Like, I've not had a conversation with anyone else in any part of the games industry in the last like 6 months where they've sounded like hopeful. Like, it's tough. Everyone is basically. It's the continued fallout of it's lots of things. There's obviously some problems in the economy kind of just generally worldwide, but there is also definitely in games a specific fallout because there was overinvestment during COVID, and once the audience pulled back,
right,
it's caused a kind of an overcorrection in the other direction. It's actually 10 other things as well, though. That's like massively oversimplified. But basically, yeah. So everyone I talk to is is trying to figure out kind of what their future projects are. It's just sad when you talk to people and you just are consistently hearing.
I will say that I share that experience across the board, both from my friends who work in AAA to people who work in AA to people who work in the indie space. I feel the exact same way about the general sentiment behind the scenes. Is very dim.
And that's all I was expressing.
A lot of people are leaving. Yeah, I definitely have a shared experience with you on that for sure.
But I think it's kind of invisible to people. What was interesting was there were kind of two reactions to it that felt simultaneously like they just pointed to the fact that the audience is unaware of this, or is aware of like a part of this. Obviously, I got a lot of people saying "Go Won't Go Broke." Obviously, those people exist on Blue Sky now.
Do they?
No, Blue Sky is 100%. Oh,
wow, I've been blocking people like mad on Blue Sky because I don't at all on Twitter. I'm doing it over there because I'm enjoying talking to people again. So anytime if someone even mildly annoys me, I'm going to block them. Whereas on Twitter, like I can't even really read my replies. It got so overrun. Instagram.
Well, you're operating at a different scale than me. In fairness, like I'm small fry, but the two views, and I guess they're the same view, just kind of pointed from different directions. Is that it's only a AAA thing, which was really interesting. The people from the perception the perception among a lot of like gamers is it's a AAA problem. AAA is fucked because microtransactions and all of that stuff.
Live service push.
Live service, like the thing I don't like about AAA games is the reason why AAA games are failing. Like I got a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then the reaction the person on Patreon saying of like, oh, it's fine because indies are gonna save us, and it's this interesting kind of disjoint where like indies are in a more precarious position than AAA, arguably, or at least kind of similar precariousness, just because the economies of both are kind of interlocked in a way that I think people just don't realize, or I think there's the perception that indie games are made for free, maybe, and I think that's kind of part of it.
Okay, can you elaborate on what you mean by them being interlocked?
The people with money who decide where the money goes operate in both spaces, fundamentally. So, like, if if Xbox has a particularly bad run with a series of releases at the AAA level, then they're less likely to make Game Pass investments.
Or it affects
the
ID at
following year
Xbox.
and then that's the indie fallout of that. And that's across the board, like platforms, publishers, like even a lot of indie publishers are like owned by or interrelated with kind of what you would consider like AAA publishers. There's just a lot. It's not separate in the way that I think a lot of the audience thinks of it that way. It is if you're like a solo dev making a small game on your own. You don't have a publisher, you're spending your own money, you're outside of that system, so like you're not going to be impacted. Or if you're like, you know, an independently massively wealthy indie developer, like you've come from money, which is the origin story of a lot of indie developers, or you've made so much money on a previous game that like you don't have to worry about anyone else. Those people are kind of in a good position.
It's a funny thing for us to even talk about, in that you're saying like indie used to mean self-published. We're now talking about indies needing publishers. That whole landscape has just changed, right? Like, like even in the indie space now, I'm just working in it now. I mean, I've worked on indie games before, but not in the capacity I'm currently working on, where I'm like going to talk to publishers. I'm doing this for 3 games right now. I'm helping a few other people find publishers for their games. That we used to talk about indie as where people took risks and made innovations, and now indie is a lot more like AAA in that you cannot take as many risks because we are all vying for the same publishers.
Same pool. I mean, to be clear, there are indies who kind of suffer. It's also, though, even the indies who don't have a publisher, say, they might take like a Game Pass deal, which would fund part of their development, or they might have an investor. There's still a need to pay people. Unfortunately, under capitalism, we do still have to. There's still a need for people to pay rent. So there's definitely, and I think that's the thing, is I think there's been, and this was true a decade ago. Like I've always kind of argued, people often use Thomas Was Alone as like an example of like you don't need money, you don't
Did
need
you self-publish that
budget. Game? The very first PC version, but almost straight after I started working with publishers to do like console releases, because there's still a lot of stuff with the console releases, you know, that just has to go through. And I was busy. I had a day job. I couldn't do those things. Like, and also crucially, like with a port, there's work from like really skilled professionals to get a port running well. So you need some cash up front to pay those people. And if you haven't got, I was at a point like with Thomas Was Alone initially, like it hadn't sold enough that was something I could invest in. So there were publishers who could kind of help with that stuff. So it's very rare. I would say back then it was relatively rare. Now it's incredibly rare that you can make your way from like concept to release without interacting with another company, be it marketing support, financial support, porting support, these kind of things. So you are still interfacing with the industry at large, even as a solo dev. And I would argue that there's very few actual solo devs, again, by the time they get to market and they've released it on 3 consoles. Because if you're a solo dev, that's still a lot of work to just release a game on a console. It can be done, and there's definitely exceptions. There's 100% people who have done that. But even them, generally, like, you know, you'll be getting some marketing support, you'll be getting maybe some money from a platform that wants you on their platform. I think the audience doesn't understand all of those different ways in which money can exchange in the process, and where I think there's still this assumption that, you know, I saw 5 cool indie games in the Xbox showcase. Yes, but why was Microsoft promoting those? Well, they have maybe a marketing deal, maybe they love the game and there's absolutely nothing changing hands, maybe they've invested in that game, maybe they're doing a Game Pass deal, maybe they're paying in exchange for an exclusivity. Like, there's all manner of deals that could have happened behind the scenes there. And I guess that's the thing when it comes to the indie side, is I feel, and this has been around for a decade and it's always pissed me off, there is this kind of idea of AAAs do it for the money and indies do it for the love, and
it's not true at all.
Indies don't have any money, and if they do have money, they're probably bad people, and AAA is a grotesque machine. And it's so much more complicated and interesting than all of that.
Yeah,
There
there's
are
a lot of
wonderful people making AAA games, and there's absolute arseholes making indie games. Like, it's absolutely a
for
mix
sure.
of
I
interesting
just,
stuff.
having worked for a AAA studio for the last 4 years, it's always weird to me when people think that they don't care. I'm so sure I would have said this before, but there's not a single person that I worked with that didn't really care about making a good game. Not one. Everyone's so passionate that it is potentially to detriment because you have so many passionate people who don't necessarily agree, and that can make things really difficult. It can create bottlenecks. It's such an odd, you just work there for the money, because it's always like, if that were the case, nobody would work in the games industry unless they're a CEO. If any of our engineers would be programming anywhere else, if that was
I
what
feel
they
like that's
cared
an
about.
anecdote I've done before. My mate who works in fintech, who every couple of years asks me how much he'd get paid as a programmer in games, because he really loves games and really wants to work, but it would be like a quarter to
Yeah.
like 20% of his current salary.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
The difference in pay for skill set in games and everywhere else is ridiculous.
The only reason you would stay is because you love it. It's just so
Sure.
nuts. There was also the indies will save us sentiment. Is that just gamers saying they're going to give me good games, or is that people thinking that indies are going to save the state of the industry? Like, what? Because I haven't read what you posted or the responses to it. Like, what
Yeah.
is that? What actually is that sentiment?
I think it's a few things. I think partially it is like the good games. The games I like come from indies, which I think is fair enough. If that's your taste, that's cool. I think there is a perception that the indies will overthrow and take over the industry, and there's interesting data backing up like some of this. Of like, if you look at like the games that made loads of money in the last 5 years, it's not a Call of Duty game. It's an Among Us, right? Like there is an interesting kind of trend towards like incredibly hyper successful indie games, and the people making those indie games then, like with Among Us, like Outer Sloth, like doing good with that money and going out and trying to like support the ecosystem. And that's wonderful. But the idea that I think there's a perception that indies are better and kinder and do it for the love, and will ultimately win in a great battle against AAA. And I just think that's kind of, it's a bit naive, I think, unfortunately. And as someone who's been around
I don't really
for
know
a while,
what that means. Like, I'm just like,
well, what we really became was the middle class. That was the, like, if you look at like my generation of indies about a decade ago, if you look at where we're all at now, we're basically middle class. We're not solo developers anymore, and we're certainly not making AAA games, but we kind of exist in this middle ground. And during this moment, a lot of my peers are really struggling because they're in that middle ground, and because they're not big enough to have to be propped up, and they're not small enough that that they don't have to worry about the
when you say middle class, are you talking about like the AA space, or is it somewhere below that?
Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah, I guess
that's
I guess so. I never think of our stuff as AA. I think that is a step above
feels like
what
it's
I make, but I
indie
don't
plus.
know.
Yeah,
exactly. Indie plus.
Yeah.
There you go. Triple I was the one that people used for a while. But yeah, it's all bollocks. But yeah, no, I think it's something I saw. I watched your announcement video of you heading off, and you were talking. I think it was in that one. You talked about Play Watch Listen a bit, and talked about like there's a lot of charlatans basically, and there's people who are kind of framing narratives. And I think that was the big thing I took away from like the responses to that, was just there's a lot of people out there in the audience who are looking for answers about why the things they play are the way they are, which is absolutely reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting a lot of very bad information about like...
It's such a tough thing to tackle that I've made numerous videos that are for that audience. And it's I genuinely don't know what to do with this, because I'll make a video where I'll be like, here's this thing that gamers definitely don't understand, that I can say they don't understand because I am a first-hand source. I have experience with this exact thing they don't understand. And I'll make a video where I go out of my way to explain the thing that they don't understand. But they don't want to fucking hear it. So I'm like, why do I keep making videos for people who, like, it's not like it's all of them, but whenever I've made one of them, the amount of like hate comments it's like in the thousands. And it's like,
how do they reframe it? Is it that you're lying? Like, what's the spin they put on it to kind of justify their
it's either that I'm
worldview?
wrong and I don't know what I'm
shill?
talking about. Yeah, it's that I'm a shill. It's that it's all marketing. Or the most common one is they will have the most disingenuous take possible. The situational disabilities one is a really good example of that. I went out of my way to explain how accessibility is a much broader term in game design and UI implementation than a lot of people think it is, which is a technical thing to talk about. But instead of being like, oh, that's what people mean when they say they want accessibility in Elden Ring, they're not talking about easy mode. They take it the most disingenuous way they possibly can, and thus the information is lost. So I'm at this like crossroads where I change my mind on it every fucking 2 weeks, where I'm like, do I make the videos anyway? Knowing that a lot of them don't want to hear it, and then I'm making videos for people who like fundamentally hate me, but I'm trying to give information. Or do I just not make anything for those people anymore? And I'm kind of leaning towards what I will do instead is have multiple people talk about it. So like if I do something that's like a one-off podcast where we talk about something that a lot of gamers I feel like don't understand, that there is a misconception on, a lot of which I think is caused by the industry like having communication problems, then maybe...
Oh, I think the games industry is complicit in all of these
100%.
problems. I'm not just blaming YouTubers. 100%.
The YouTubers do drive me fucking nuts though, because they're so
YouTubers,
wrong. They're just so wrong about things and say it so confidently. And then it's so funny to watch. You'll see these people on Twitter have these little, well, it's because of this. And it's like, it's not fucking because of that in this.
Presumably they're repeating the soundbite. They've taken
totally,
that opinion
they're
and copied
so
it.
sure. Like they say it with such confidence, even though they've heard it from some guy who doesn't work in game dev and has no experience with the thing he's talking about. It's like watching an alternate reality. It's crazy. So I think what I'm going to do is, outside of like big events, stop making videos for these people, because they do not want to hear it, to the extent that they will just hear the worst version. Why am I making content for people who want to scream at me, right? They already have this idea of who I am in their heads. Like, it's not... I've tried so many times and it rarely works. So my plan is to instead make it more discussional. Those will get less views. They are less likely to be shared, probably in a positive way, because half the time it's just like grifter YouTubers who are reacting to that stuff anyway. But then you will hear more perspectives from different people, is my thought. I don't know, but it's definitely a thing that I think is totally reflective of exactly what you're talking about, where you can get a response from a bunch of gamers who it's their hobby. They spend thousands of hours doing it. We're not saying that they don't know this thing intimately well. They could still be an expert on a particular game by the volume that they played it, the Reddit threads, the amount that they talk about it.
Totally.
But that doesn't translate particularly well to understanding how the industry works behind the scenes. And it's like, it is an odd thing, because I feel like even film, I'm sure we've spoken about this before, it's much easier to find out how a movie was made, or at least you have a base understanding of how a movie is made.
I think they're definitely more communicative about it. But even that, like, I'll hang out with friends who work in the film industry, and I'll confidently express something I saw in a making of feature, and they'll be like, no, that's not how that tech works. I'm like, I watched like a 20-minute video where they explain like that's how the tech works. And they're like, oh, that's just marketing. That's nonsense. Actually, you have to do this, this, and this. And it's like, so even that, it's I feel like we're just doing the greatest hits here. There's the Michael Crichton quote, which I love, where Michael Crichton pulled out a newspaper and he was reading it and taking in the day's news, and he got to the film section. And he read the film section, and everything he read in there, he was like, this is, because he worked in film, obviously, for many years, looked at it, and he was like, everything in here is nonsense, this is wrong. And he had this epiphany of, wait, why did I trust everything else I read before this page and after this page, when I know this page is dishonest?
Woof.
Like, and it's that kind of thing of like, is film actually more understandable, or are we just Dunning-Krugering? Are we just assuming we know how film works? You've worked in film, so I'm not putting that on you. Me personally, do I just think I know? Because I'll visit, like, I get to visit film sets a bit, which is nice. And my wife works in film, so I get to visit her things. And I'll walk around and I'll just casually pick up stuff, which is like, oh, I had no idea that's how that worked, or that seems weird, or like, and I do think I wonder if I'm no different to the person who's like, I know how games are made, who's never been around games. Am I like that with film, basically?
I mean, we're probably like that with
I like
a
to
million
think I have the
things.
self-awareness.
Yeah,
exactly. You have to, right? We have to function in society, You need to get into a car and assume you know that it'll work and how it works and be fine.
Yeah.
And and you're not going to be a mechanic. You're not going to know all the information you need to know, but you kind of just go along with it. There's a certain degree of acceptance of the world around us and belief that we understand it that gets us all through.
There's a lot of that. We're in a floating rock, plummeting through and vast, endless, empty
Don't believe
space.
NASA's lies. It's a flat plane. And there's like a rock formation around us.
If you say so.
Have we not got into that yet? Like, I'm a total flat earth.
We haven't had our flat earth mic episode.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Glowheads,
I mean, I feel like I'm sort of... I don't know how to articulate this in a way that isn't just totally wanky.
That's what this show's all about.
It's just wank.
Just masturbatory nonsense, the whole thing.
Like, I'm very much around film at this point. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's a weird thing that, like, I go to Hollywood parties.
You've been in stuff.
Yeah, but like, I'm like regularly at a party
yeah.
with Nathan Fillion. Like, it is a weird thing where, like, sort of recently,
like specifically Nathan Fillion, you're exclusively partying with
just
Nathan
him.
Fillion. You're
all
living
the
dream of every 12-year-old 20 years ago.
He followed me on
That's
Instagram
amazing.
the other day because we're at parties together all the time, and so I'm around film in my social life a lot, and obviously games in my professional life. And I will say that the one thing that I feel I didn't know beforehand that surprises me at every company and yet is always true is that everything is always on fire. From the outside, every company, you always go, well, they made a dumb mistake, but you don't assume that it's fucking on fire. Everything is always on fire. And I think that's probably the thing that, like, not that the games industry is different, but the thing about film that I've definitely learned by being around more people who make movies or TV shows or whatever else is the amount of things that constantly go wrong that we don't hear about. And it's everything is wrong. Everything goes wrong all the time. And I just feel like this is like the biggest human lie that you get fed, or at least that's what I believed, is that you think that when people are making good products that everything must be functional. And it's not. Yeah. Everything's just
often
always
the opposite, right?
Always.
Often it's the opposite. Usually,
and I think it's just it can be a little more time consuming to fix the fires in game dev than it can be in film. Like, for example, when I was working on VHS Beyond, we had issues where bits of the set didn't look right. Mike Flanagan wrote the script, Kate Siegel was the director. They talk about what they want one of the sets to look like, and because it's, an independent movie, you don't have access to a ton of resources. So one of the sets that I'm referring to was made out of paper mache. There's a lot of complicated things about making that look like it's not paper mache on camera. And so there was one day where we needed something to look different. So Kate just got a screwdriver and jammed it into the paper mache and it fixed the problem. And it's like,
it's awesome.
It worked. That's not, you can't really do that so much with game dev. Because
I don't know.
I feel like jamming a screwdriver.
There's some virtual screwdrivers.
No, but I just feel like it takes.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously came from AAA.
I would say
it just takes so much fucking approval, Mike. Like, I just feel like there's so much. Like, if something's wrong, you have to go through 10 people, and it can take you 3 fucking weeks.
But I think that's probably the same in film, right? I think if you're on a Marvel movie, you can't necessarily put the screwdriver in. Yeah, like in an indie space, I'm putting virtual screwdrivers wherever I can. I'm fixing
I like that
things
this
as
is
they
a new
are.
phrase that we have for fixing something shabbily, is
Virtual
just a screwdriver in the wall. My point there is basically just, as someone who didn't know that much about film, now having a bunch of friends who work in film and being around film, there are things that I definitely didn't understand, but not to the extent that I don't understand things in AAA game dev, in that there are still people that I work with who do things in AAA game dev that even doing it for 4 years, working effectively full-time in a studio, there are still people whose jobs I fundamentally did not understand. And I don't feel that same way about film. Though the one thing that stands out to me a lot is how, this is going to sound so stupid, but how much more important editing is than I would have thought where film is concerned. Again, I know that sounds dumb,
every actor Oscar should be handed to the
To
actor
the editor as
and to
well.
the editor
100%.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
I have saved vocal performances in my games just by choosing the right cuts.
100%.
Like, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. People have no idea. I've had that a few times where I've gone through, like, you know, editing a vocal performance, and I've had friends and colleagues like in the vocal recording process, and they've come out and been like, that wasn't great, and I'll be like, no, I got what I needed, and then they'll hear the final version in game and they'll be like, that was an amazing performance. It's like, yeah, because there's the 25% that's in amongst the stuff that you didn't like so much. 100%. Full respect to every actor I've ever worked with. Obviously it's a process, but like, yes, it's the editing is a bigger part of the process. I wonder as well, like with what you're saying, I wonder if proximity breeds humility. I wonder if you only feel that way because you were awed by and respected the people you worked with closely whose job you didn't understand. And if you continue your journey into film and doing more stuff in the film world, if from that proximity you will gain a respect and understanding that you don't know as much as you think you do, because there's that classic learning curve of like you start off feeling confident and then you realize how little you know and then you build back up from there. I wonder if you're in the pit in games but you're still climbing the mountain.
Totally true. I mean, I've not delved into it enough to say there's just less that surprises me, really.
Right.
But like, I guess I do ask questions a lot. Like Mike Flanagan just released Hush, but in black and white, and they call it the Shush cut of Hush. And so I was like, so when you're color grading that, do you have to redo it or you just make it black and white? And he was like, no, you have to recolor grade the whole thing and then you put it in black and white and then you recolor grade on top of that. And so I will ask a lot of those questions. But I guess my questions are more specific to editing because at least that's a thing I can do a little. So I don't know. You're probably right.
I guess that's your entry point, right? Yeah.
Totally. It's the most relatable thing that I outside of writing, really. But yeah, point anyway being just, I feel like film, they are more open about how things are made. No small part of that comes from press tours, right? That is part of their marketing, is the people who made the thing talking about the thing. The games industry rarely does that. You will only have a really, really PR curated, like, here's what the game is, not a here's how we made this thing. And I would love to facilitate more of those kinds of conversations. That is definitely something.
And I wonder if that's part of why people respect indies a bit more in terms of like believing that indies love the work, is because they've at least heard us talk more. Yeah. Like I'll give an hour-long interview where I go into detail on something, and I know people in AAA who have been so, like, the joy of folks when they get to do a GDC talk, because that's like the one place where if you're the person on the team who did this specific weird little feature, that's the one place you're basically going to be allowed to talk about it in public. The joy AAA developers often get with that experience of being able to share that and go, here's something weird I dedicated my life to for a year and makes your experience slightly better, but is technically really interesting. And that's, I mean, that's it. I want gamers to watch more GDC talks and fewer thumbnails with like, this is why one of these 5 people you don't like is responsible for everything you never enjoyed and why you'll never be a child again. Like that that kind of video style, I just wish. I get why it exists. I get that it will always exist. But
and again, I do think that like the industry has caused some of those problems, right? Like
totally.
It's not.
We created the vacuum in which that can breathe.
Yes. In which that can thrive, and people are frustrated because they don't understand things, so that is how they react. Like, I don't... Like, the hateful stuff sucks, but in some cases, I'm also like, again, these people are investing thousands of hours into a hobby they feel really passionately about. They can be experts, just not in the way things are made. And so they get frustrated when they don't understand things. What else are they supposed to do? They don't owe us
their understanding.
Totally agree. Yeah. It's just... It will just never not frustrate me from the inside, watching people be loudly wrong and then watching other people 100% believe them and deny every game dev who responds. That, holy shit, is hard to watch. You'll be like, everyone is saying the same thing, but because some YouTuber who didn't work on this told you something else, that's the person you believe?
Yeah.
Really? But it's like such a weird ecosystem of assuming the people who are involved are biased rather than assuming the people who are involved are sources. Like, it just...
or lacking the nuance that both are simultaneously probably true, and you can learn stuff from interacting with that
Also true.
with that
Yeah.
literacy and that understanding.
So
Yeah,
in a way, Indies Will Save Us is correct here in that like this particular issue that we're talking about, which is a communication problem, can be alleviated by more indies talking about how things were made. The more of that we have,
as
the
long
more
as
of an
those
understanding there
indies.
is.
Yeah, the only issue I have with that is, and I say this like this is me criticizing my own family here. Like, I still think of myself. I think it's impossible to call myself an indie as I work on Disney IP. I appreciate that, but like, it's where I come from. I wish indies. I'm always a bit disappointed when I see indies trying to create the us versus them rhetoric with AAA.
Definitely
I've
don't
always
want
found that kind of distasteful, and I see that a fair amount of like, sell your own stuff and tell people why your stuff is awesome and different and special. That's fine, but there is definitely a kind of indie who will like just throw their peers. I promise indies who do that, the people who make the games that you're choosing to separate yourself from in that way are just as nerdy and awesome and in love with the medium as you are. Okay. It really Thomas Was Alone gets thrown whenever a game comes out and the story's not very good. I will see a bunch of people like referencing Thomas Was Alone did it with rectangles. This AAA game, they don't know how to write. And it's like, and I stopped, but I did used to like reply to those kind of threads, going like, there were probably 10 writers trying their hardest to make this good, who are all more talented writers than me. It's a shame it didn't work out on this occasion, but please don't use my game to like just insult people. That's not cool.
It's also that's a really specific one that again I thought about making a video about that. And this is not even just from my own experience, it's from all the other AAA writers that I know. I've had a conversation recently. It was actually with Asmongold. Had a private conversation with him about video game writing, where he had some criticisms about video.
Did you like punch him at any point during the conversation on behalf of the rest of us?
No.
I'm sorry. Carry on. I don't know. You might be. Yeah, I don't be there.
He said something along the lines of like, it was like all video game writing is like bland and uninspired and cookie cutter and this is the reason. And I was like, no. If you think that a lot of video game writing in the AAA space is bland and cookie cutter and whatever else, it is more often because the process of making a game requires so many cuts. And that is not very compatible with telling a story that you're passionate about. So you can start with a beautiful story, and then you present something to animation and they say that's too expensive. And then you have to change it all of a sudden, and then you have to figure out everything else you have to change, while 7 other departments doing the same thing to the story. So you just have to start picking away at it, and things get cut. And so whatever thread you may have had that you were super passionate about has to be extremely malleable because you're working with so many teams, you have so many needs, and the budgets are so specific. So it's like, I think there are a lot of fantastic AAA video game stories. Like that's A, a lot of them are incredible. But B is that it's, if there are weaknesses, which in some cases I think there are, it is not going to be because the writers suck. It is not going to be, I mean, sometimes they can, to be fair, but it's less likely. And it is not going to be because they don't care, or that they're uninspired, or that they're trying to make slop, or whatever else you would say. It's because you are having your darlings repeatedly murdered, and the thing that you pitched and really cared about doesn't exist in the same way anymore. I was talking to one friend about this who worked on a new IP, like he was working on brand new IP, game ended up getting cancelled. And he was like, even on a new IP, because they were so worried about trying to make it a franchise, there were so many cuts or things that had to change from this whole fucking world that he built that just, it ended up crumbling and being something that didn't even resemble the original thing just because of budgets and pieces moving around. Like, it's really fucking complicated.
That's the thing, it's really fucking complicated, and I do think,
I kind of think Rectangle Game, in some ways, could be easier to tell a profound story than 600 Team.
I've said this is again cliche, I've said this many times. If you look at the games that are complimented for having good, cohesive, excellent storytelling, 9 times out of 10, studio is owned or led by a writer.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10. Because ultimately, it's like you say, the power dynamics need to work in favor of the story rather than against the story. And that's why I think that's genuinely why Naughty Dog makes coherent, good stories. I've not loved every story Naughty Dog's put into a game, but they're all very undeniably of a very good standard, right? And that is in part because the leadership of that company are storytellers. Same with Rockstar. Like it's like most problems in the world. It's systemic rather than individual. There's no one boogeyman who's ruining a thing that you like. It's the structures and systems of our society that creates problems. Ultimately, usually, and we should, burn it all down. No, I'm joking.
Indies will save us.
Indies will save us.
Honestly, burn it all down. Who gives a shit? Yeah, it's a.
But indies will. The people who are like this is the thing I like to say. You know this, but I'll say this anyway. Like Activision, literally a publisher that exists. The original intent of Activision was a bunch of developers, indie developers, who were working on other people's games, who wanted to go and make original IP and have the creative freedom to do cool stuff. It was cool. It was Activision was like an activist company when it started. It was a series of indie developers. And obviously now Activision is one of the biggest AAA publishers. That's what happens. That's what we grow.
EA was the punk rock publisher of the industry. That's what they were going for. They were like they were breaking rules. They were so different to what they are now. And now they're just like this giant mega pop. Yeah, well, in capitalism, it certainly is. That's certainly true.
Well, it's the thing. It's I would even put myself in that category to a smaller extent of like, I came up at a moment where the dinosaurs, the middle class of the games industry at that point, were not doing so well, and a plucky individual could go and make a game and do okay. And now, 12 years later, my kind of developers are kind of the dinosaurs. We're kind of the dinosaurs a little bit, and maybe it is time for things to shift and change. So it's interesting when you step outside of these moments a little bit and kind of think in that context, because it is a cyclical industry. It's not always going to all be up and to the right the whole time. Like, things are going to fall off, things are going to grow. But yeah, we'll see.
We've had many conversations over the last couple of years about the amount of layoffs in the state of the industry. And it is bleak and it sucks and it's heartbreaking and it, just what a shit show for people who work so hard to make things that fucking just get shouted on Reddit.
And unfortunately, it's not over.
I don't think it is either.
No.
So where do you think we're headed? When does this end? Like what's gonna happen, Mike? What's gonna happen?
It's gonna happen. Set your watch by the predictions I'll make. I don't like making predictions. I'll say what's happened previously. That's probably the safest bet. What's happened previously in these moments is a paradigm shift. A new opportunity has come up, and people have gone excited about that opportunity, and it's revitalized things. And if anything, you could make a pretty compelling argument that the reason things feel quite as bad in the games industry right now is because we haven't had one of those for a while.
True. Compared
to historically. So that could be a new console. Who knows if anyone's about to announce a new console. It could be a new console, it could be a new style of game altogether, it could be a new business model, a new platform, a new genre. Like, there's a million things. When those moments of disruption happen, they can cause a cascade event that just kind of lifts everything up.
Yeah.
And that's happened many times. And I do think one of those might happen. I don't think it's fucking AI. Although that was also a thing. I got a lot of people going, oh, it's the AI's good. AI's taking over games. It's just a natural event of that. And it's like, no, if the AI thing is it's NFTs again, it's nonsense. It's got a longer shelf life in terms of the conversation, which is interesting, like academically.
Well, yeah,
but...
I mean, we could talk about that for a whole episode too. But I'm in agreement that it's not going to change everything. I don't want to derail.
It's not going to change everything. It's not the kind of paradigm shift I'm talking about.
Right.
Well, the kind of paradigm shift I'm talking about will be a thing which opens up a new audience, or brings in a lot of money, or excites people, or changes the conversation to something else. Right now, we're in a moment where the generation who most play games, kind of younger people, although of course games audiences are aging, but the majority of that audience is still, and probably will be for a long time, still young. that audience is largely playing a smaller number of games than they ever have before because they're into their live service games. They're sticking with one experience, and they're kind of locked in on existing hardware and haven't got excited about a new console for a very long time. And something will shift. Something will shift that will which will knock those people into a place where they're like, I'd love to play a Mike Bithell game. We hope. There'll be some kind of event like that, and that will shake things up. And I think that's if there's optimism in this, I think it's that there will be, the sun will rise again. There'll be a moment, and it will change. And I've rode the waves of a couple of those. So I was part of the Vita was failing and Sony desperately needed something to release on Vita, so they put a couple of indie games on it, and I was one of those games, and that gave me a credibility boost when Thomas was alone. And when the Switch came out, the AAA companies didn't believe it was going to sell because they all lost money on Wii U, so there was this moment where for 6 months, if you were an indie and you could get on there, you could do well, and we did that. And it's these kind of moments, I was early on Steam, there's all of these kind of opportunities, and it's my advice to any indies watching this is just keep a fucking eye out for what that next opportunity is. Smaller, nimbler studios and individuals or teams will be able to jump on those opportunities very quickly. I'll be able to jump on them reasonably quickly, and AAA won't be able to jump on them quickly at all because of our relative sizes.
Keep that in mind. Layers deep, team of 3 people. Keep my eye out for opportunities. That's what you're telling me.
I know it's glib, but it is genuinely the best advice. Because I get
life
more
advice,
time
Mike.
passes.
Just keep your eyes out for opportunities, fam. That's all across the board.
Just push the envelope. Just innovate. Just disrupt. But this one genuinely seems to be a pattern that repeats. There will be a new space where AAA can't get there fast enough. And that will be the space where indie does very well. And then AAA will come a little bit later and they'll do very well there. And we'll just see what that is. Maybe it's a theoretical future console. Maybe it's a new platform. Maybe it's a new way of playing games, a new style of device. We thought it might be VR for a while. We thought it might be AI for a while. We thought it might be a few other things for a while. It's not turned out to be those things at scale. But who knows? The next thing might be.
I do feel like there are things bubbling, there are things people are trying, VR is consistently improving. I love the fucking MetaQuest. I'll shell that thing like my life depends on it because I love it so much.
It's good. It just needs to work out a way to not be a blindfold. The second and there's some cool interesting tech in that area.
Well,
the second that switch flips, it's going to be great.
Pass through. Do you know about MetaQuest pass through?
Oh, very much so, yeah.
So the pass
and also what's coming in terms of in lens kind of if they can make these. And I was one of the guys about 2 years ago who was physics won't allow you to make a pair of these that play video games. And it's kind of there's been some bending of light, literally, that's kind of led to actually that might be viable.
I have a pair actually of XR glasses right here. So, pass through everybody is basically a setting on MetaQuest that some games have where as you're playing the game, you can still see your living room. But yeah, it does function on a camera that's on the front. I have these glasses.
The problem is eye contact, right? Is there is something still very human about when you've got something over your eyes, you feel unsafe. And that seems to be a barrier that is really kind of locking us in. But I love these ones that are now just optical, where you can literally wear a pair of sunglasses.
Yeah, I don't know what sunglasses. So these here. These are Virtua sunglasses. They are XR glasses. You put them on like this. I can't with my headphones on. And they have a little setting so you can black the screen out completely. And you connect them to this, which there are a few things. It sits in your pocket, and you are seeing through the glasses while also seeing everything a full-size video game. I've played Switch games on this thing, and it's really, really cool. Not.
And that just needs to shrink down and look a little bit more like a fashionable item. And I'm intrigued. We'll see. I suppose
it's cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong that there is something around the corner that will help it, and we don't know how to fix that problem necessarily. But I will also say, the impression that I get and I know this sucks to say, is that the situation the industry's in right now is still got another 2 years left. Like that is the impression that I have from everyone.
That's
that
what
I've
I've.
spoken
Yes, I've heard the same sentiments from people.
to. And it's maybe GTA will fix it. I feel like GTA is going to fix everything to do with my life, so maybe it will.
I mean, it might. I mean, like all. I know you're kidding, but like those are the kind of
Only
events
a
where
little.
a bunch of people go and buy a console
Yeah.
and they're going to play GTA and they're going to have a great time with GTA. But maybe they put up the storefront and go, "Well, I'll try something else on here," or they've got a partner or a sibling who like doesn't want to play GTA, but I'll try something on your new PS5 or whatever. Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I also think that there are changes in the way games are being made, which are interesting. I think studios are restructuring around those opportunities as well. I'm not in a position to do that, but I'm seeing other studios do that. So like making viable games at the kind of the scale you're working at, like 3 or 4 people. That's realistically possible in a way it wasn't even a few years ago. So stuff like that is a potential route as well. We might just have to step down to the assumption that games are going to be made by smaller groups of people. Like if you look at like the history of music, for example, like that has stepped down to like a smaller and smaller production process over time. Maybe games are going to go down a similar route at anything other than the AAA kind of level. I don't know. It's an interesting ride to be on.
I certainly don't think
but,
AAA is going to die. I don't think that it's going anywhere. It is still, like, that's the weirdest thing about all these conversations, is that the revenue is still incredibly high for video games across the board.
Yep.
They are still making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there has been a bit of a AAA drought in the last few years, and I think
it's also a consolidation fallout as well. All the industry kind of consolidated about 3-4 years ago, and we're now seeing that in the product releasing. So you're seeing fewer AAA games for sure.
Yeah. People are also seemingly more willing to push, which I do wonder if that's a Cyberpunk fallout. I'm kind of hoping that it is, that if there's anything to learn from that, it's that you shouldn't rush things and listen to the team when they tell you that it's not ready. But hopefully, maybe, I don't know. Didn't affect sales for that game that tremendously is the craziest part. Like it got the refunds on PlayStation, but that game still sold really, really well, even though it came out with a lot of bugs for a lot of people. But
I've not played Cyberpunk in a couple of
God,
It's
I love
good
it
now,
so
right?
much.
I've heard it's doing
It always
really
ran
good.
great
Yeah,
for
I need
me.
to
I
play
loved
it.
it from day one, but I was running
Well,
it on
you're
a
in it because
3080.
you're biased.
And
because
because
you're
I'm in
you're biased
it,
'cause you're
no,
in it.
I love that game. But it is now the game it always should have been, for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. It's been on my. I will get to it at some point. It's very much my aesthetic. I like it.
Yeah, it's rad. But I'm gonna leave today on a much more positive note. I'm obsessed with Tetris Effect, Mike. I'm obsessed with it.
The one from a few years ago.
Yes, it's ruining my life. I cannot
Okay.
stop playing Tetris Effect.
One could say you are a victim of the Tetris effect.
Nice. Since I'm now unemployed, I am already like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to make sure I have more of a schedule, because I stayed up till 5 a.m. playing Tetris Effect, because I was like, what have I got to do? It's fine.
I got no boss anymore.
Yeah,
I'm the boss
I
of
can
me.
play Tetris
The
Effect till
boss of
5
me
a.m.
wants
if
to
I
play
want.
Tetris. Yeah.
I'm really bad at Tetris. Something about my brain's not great at shapes, just good at words.
Interesting.
Not great at shapes. So I am improving, but I'm on the final level of the Tetris Effect journey mode, which you have to clear 90 lines. You start at speed 10, drop to speed 7, and then get up to speed 13. The 13, it's kicking my butt. It's just once I get to the 13, bored of Tetrons and everything goes to hell. But the reason that I want to talk about this game, outside of just being vaguely obsessed with it, is I had seen someone play it before, and I was like, cool, it's Tetris. But it's not. It is also like a beautiful visual auditory experience. It is. I feel like I'm stoned while saying this. But
I was going to say, yeah, 100%.
It is just.
Well, you feel
so
stoned playing it. For
yeah,
sure.
it's just so pleasant. And so I play it with all the lights off, and they do recommend wearing headphones, but I have surround sound for my TV setup. And then I have hue sync lights. Yeah, I mean that's a Rahulism. He like
I
refuses
love my
to
hue
not.
lights as well. Hue lights have made my life.
Do you use the
there we
sync
go.
on
Look at me
the
in demonstrable manner.
TV
I,
ones?
that's a step too far. I prefer a dark room when I'm watching TV or a movie.
Well, you can always
If
turn
I've
it
got the
off.
lights down, I want them off altogether. Yeah, but if I'm
Fair
gonna have them
enough.
off, then I might as well. Why invest in the
Because
yes.
it's so fucking cool when you play Tetris Effect, Mike, and the whole room glows.
Tetris Effect seems like one that would genuinely actually be great.
so
like
sick.
Tetris Effect, because it's very palette varied as well.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get those hits of different
It's
colors. Yeah, I get
gorgeous.
that. That makes
so I
sense.
first played it on VR and then was playing it on PlayStation for my 5 a.m. shebang. And it's just Tetris has been around for such a long time. It's an iconic game, and it's still Tetris. I don't think Tetris as a game has fundamentally changed, but the presentation is just so beautiful and so delightful that anyone who's not already played it, it's not like it wasn't hyped when it came out. Just highly recommend playing it. It's
Person
fantastic.
watching Play Watch Listen who's never played Tetris. This is
Tetris
your
Effect
recommendation.
specifically. It's so
It is wonderful
pretty.
though. It's good. It's very
yeah,
pretty.
it's just
very pretty.
I just there's so many good songs on there too though that then they're all really unexpected, and you just like I keep dancing while I'm playing this game, and it's fucking 13 speed and I'm having a panic attack because it's too goddamn far. You can't even see the blocks fall on they're just it's a lot.
Yeah. It's a nice reminder, that game, that we are an audiovisual medium. Like, I feel like we talk a lot as the medium's developed. We 100%, and we should, and it's cool, talk a lot about like game balance and storytelling and mise-en-scène and world building, and but like it's just really fucking cool to have like the back of your brain just massaged by like beautiful color and music in sync with each other, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's very primal. It's very kind of basic human interaction. It's very cool.
And what a wonderful display of the diversity of the medium. That in the same day I could play Red Dead Redemption 2 and Tetris Effect. What a different experience you can have for those two things. I think we should save the games industry, Mike. I think it should stay around. I think it's got
I'm going
some
to rally
good
the
stuff.
indies.
Yeah, they'll
I'm
save
going
us.
to project the big letter I into the sky, and they're all going to show up at my house, and we're gonna make an incredibly pretentious game about loneliness. And it's going to save the industry. It's going to be great.
What if we made it rectangles?
Oh.
I will also say something that's already been funny about now existing in the indie space is I've spoken to so many people about publishers, and it's so funny. Like, there's still stuff now that I'll talk more about game development, and I'm excited to talk to about that for later. I'll probably have the two co-devs on the show at some point, maybe. They're both super cool. But I'm already hearing which publishers suck and who screwed over who. All this stuff nobody knows about, man. It's crazy. Like, I'd never go public with any of that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the
but
thing,
I'm
is everyone knows. And
drama everywhere.
It's so funny.
All of them.
I think publishers don't think indies talk to each other.
Oh my
Because
God.
the number of times you'll hear like a story, or like it's known. If you're a publisher watching this, we all know that thing you did.
And I know so fast now too. And everyone was so down to tell me too. The one place
100%.
that everyone I asked that had 100% marks across the board, again with the caveat that I did not ask everyone under the label, was Outer Sloth. Everyone said really positive things about Outer
They're
Sloth.
good people over there, though. They're good people. They're looking after people. They're behaving like a developer who made a lot of money and wants to do some good.
What a cool thing to
respect
do,
that.
man. It just rules.
It's classy as
Like,
fuck.
it sounds like they're picking games straight up based on what they like. Like, they're just like,
as they
we
should.
really like this
As they
game.
should.
It's not like, we think this will make us a bunch of money. Like, they're being really thoughtful about that.
It's how
I
we
love it.
pick what we back. Like, that's what's cool about it, is it's just a massive version of what a lot of indies do. We financially have helped other projects and done things like, but obviously they can just do it at a scale that's insane and really cool. Speaking of which, I will do a plug. Amberspire, a project that we're publishing, has been announced.
So what is it?
You should wishlist
Tell
on
me about
Steam. It's cool. It's a dice-based city builder.
Cool.
So you're building a city out, and you roll your dice, and that kind of defines. Well, I'll let people go and look at the Steam page, but it defines kind of what you're playing with and what your options are. And it's just a lovely distillation of a city builder. It's
Very
great.
cool. Yeah, I love that.
That's from Nick. It's really good.
We'll leave
It's
a link
really
in the
cool
description.
thing.
I'll leave a link to wishlist latest deep. And
There you
what
go.
was
Both
that
got our
called?
plugs in. It works. That's called Amber Spire,
Amber Spire.
and people should wishlist it on Steam. Yeah, it's really cool.
This,
But that's
at
the
this
thing
point,
is
this
you
is just
can-
a Steam wishlist shelling show. That's what we're here for, really.
Well, for a while, we owned the word wishlist. If you typed in wishlist into Twitter, like for an animated GIF, you would just get us doing wishlist jokes.
Really?
And that's no longer the case. I'm disappointed. 'Cause basically, other developers, I think, did their own animated GIFs wishlist. I am annoyed that it was like me pointing at like a wishlist
I love that. That's
icon.
so good.
And you would see other people announcing their games. There would be me pointing at
No
the wishlist.
way.
And I was so hurt when the industry moved on and started
Well,
using
no,
other
that
things.
could
I
be
was
because the person who
iconic,
made all
literally.
of the Play, Watch, Listen GIFs stopped running the account they did that on. So that all of those GIFs may
okay.
have
Well,
like
maybe that's it.
folded. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know that they reached
If
out.
you're
to
watching this internet, do your thing.
Yep.
Make me the face of
It-
wishlisting again.
Figure it out. It's got to be Mike Bithell. Mike Bithell's wish list. Click now.
Use this. This is it. There we go.
There's something there.
Awesome.
There's something there.
Something there. This is how we're going to save the industry, Alana.
One wish list at a time, baby. Thanks for watching, everybody. Austin is not here this week because he is in New York doing a live performance of Journey, which is really fucking cool, and I wish I could be there.
Haven't we heard that enough times at this point, people?
Time
Come
you
on.
gonna play the same
How
game?
many
Austin?
times do we have to hear Journey?
Fucking move
Like, come
on,
now.
dude. Get a life, man. I'm Alana. I'm a video game writer, now narrative director of an indie game. That's Mike Bithell. He's a video game director. He's also written an indie game. So, and we're gonna
Cool.
save the industry
We
one
are,
wish
on this
list at a
podcast.
time.
Sorry for insulting you at the end, Austin.
You're not sorry, don't lie.
I'm
We'll
not
see
sorry.
you guys in 2
It's
weeks.
true.
Bye.